My favorite thing to remind myself of, because it's really effective in helping me work through a period of anxiety or fear or whatever's happening, is I remind myself that I'm greater than any challenge. I am always greater than my challenge. And when I remind myself that, I just immediately calm down. And then the second thing that I typically do is I really take a scan of my entire life and what my greatest challenge was. And then that helps me kind of compartmentalize and balance it, because what I find is that most often my anxiety and fear, it's an overreaction, because I have dealt with a lot of PTSD. And so I tend to have these overreactions, almost like a worst case scenario thing, in an effort to like protect myself. I'm gonna kind of buffer myself and think in that direction. So what I have found to be most helpful is to just really put myself in the perspective of, number one, acknowledging that there is no challenge greater than me. And that just immediately just puts me at ease, knowing that it does not matter what's in front of me. I am always going to exist beyond this challenge. And then number two, what that statement does is that it puts everything in perspective, because I look at everything that's happened to me and I recognize how I have an emotional tendency to overreact. And then it gives me the opportunity to be like, oh, wow, I didn't need to take it to that level. So what happens is, when you have self-awareness around that and you start to notice how you're overreacting to certain things and you're having these emotional reactions, and then when the thing happens again and you notice yourself reacting, you then see you overreacting, and you can be like, oh, okay, all right, I can calm down. It's a really gradual thing to change how you cope and to change how you react. But it is the key to everything. It's the key to manifestation, because how we react is then how our state of being is. And our state of being is going to dictate what we're able to manifest. Our state of being is going to dictate what type of experience we're going to have. So it is so incredibly important to the manifestation process to really, when you are faced with anything from an adverse standpoint, to look at it from the perspective of, I'm always greater than it. Even if it's a situation where I may not live much longer, or it's something like that, you're always greater than it. And it's something that you just hold as this solid belief. And the beautiful thing about that is, the longer you hold it, the stronger it becomes. So that to the point where like you just create such a strength within you. And it's all through confronting the feelings of needing to cope in a different way. So there's another thing that I do when I'm feeling like intense stress or anxiety or fear. And I remind myself of the worst thing that ever happened to me. And that was holding my dad as he died when I was 29. And I think about that because I've been able to heal from that experience and learn how me establishing a relationship with death was one of the most important things I could ever do to be able to live life as who I feel like I'm meant to live my life as. Because really, it's the biggest thing to really establish a relationship with, because until you know it, it's really hard to figure out how you're going to react, or like try to, and when you're trying to think of how you'll be, it creates a lot of stress and anxiety, and it can really detract from your path and being able to manifest, because you're so concerned about this thing under the rug that eventually all of us are going to have to interact with at some point in our lives. So what I do is while I remember that as my worst moment, I also recognize it as one of my most important moments, because his death made me realize that it was okay. And I didn't think it was going to be okay, but once I experienced it and I was able to connect with his energy and feel that he existed beyond that experience, I knew I was going to be fine. And that's a very personal journey for anyone when it comes to establishing your relationship with death. So, my example is just how I was able to do that. But I like explaining that example because it just shows you how beautiful the duality in life is. Because through my worst situation, I learned my most beautiful and important wisdom. So on the heels of that, that is a highly emotional one. But the other thing that I remind myself of is my children. And so when I'm having existential concerns, or, I'm feeling fear about, losing my older parents, or, those types of things, I remind myself of my children and them coming into the world and realizing that where they came from is beautiful. It's incredible. They came from the unknown, and that's where my father is. And so I think the more, and that's just, again, how I've created my relationship with it. Everybody's relationship is going to be different and unique to your path and your feelings and where you're at. But what it really comes down to is making peace with your fears and trying to understand them. Because once we make peace with them and we try to understand them, we can transcend them, and we're not held prisoner by them anymore. Addressing your fears is really, it's saying what it is that you're afraid of. Like, when my dad died, I was afraid of everything. I mean, I was afraid of seeing him dead. I was afraid of what would I do with him? Did I have enough money to be able to deal with the estate, or what do I need to do? But it's just, when it comes to addressing your fears, it's just really acknowledging them, because oftentimes what happens is we will feel the feeling of fear and then kind of check out, instead of being like, what is it that I am really fearful of? We need to be able to answer that question. So we need to be able to sit in our fear for a little bit. And it's not about pushing it away. It's about understanding it. So it's taking some time and space with what it is that we are afraid of. And usually people avoid that because it's uncomfortable. But it's the path through. It's the path through your fears. You work through your fears. Think about it. You don't go over a fear. You go through. You work through your fears, and then when you think about it, like when you go to a gym, when you work through your fears, you come out stronger. So it's looking at it that way. That when you're aware and you're willing to be with it, that opens the door to you being able to eventually move beyond it.